A company without any digital presence is a major red flag. It could even send a signal to the danger of going for that kind of interview. Hello, my name is Aladengu, and in this short video, we'll try to look at 5 major red flags to detect a job scam and how best to navigate your ways around job invitations that are not really genuine. In recent time, we have had news reports of young job seekers in Nigeria being lured into several dangerous places. Some of them have been kidnapped, some have been killed in some instances. Due to the economic situation of the country, many young Nigerians had desperately looking for jobs. With the unemployment rate at 33% and inflation rate at about 20%, it is very understandable that the situation of the country is very, very critical. Many scam companies and other individuals are capitalizing on this reality to carry out their nefarious activities and exploit young job seekers all over the country. So, in the context of that, it is important for young job seekers to understand how best to navigate their ways around some of these antics being deployed by scam companies and other so called agencies, sending invites to people and inviting them for several job interviews across the country. In this short video, I'll try to look at 5 major red flags that can help you make the right decision when you get a job interview. In case you join me for the first time, please subscribe to this channel, like our videos, and follow across social media platforms to get more content like this. Now let's get into business. The number one red flag that I'm going to talk about is internet visibility or digital footprint. When you get an invitation for a job interview, the first thing that you should do as a job seeker is to do a background check of the company. That way, it can help you know what the company does, can help you know what they do apart from what you think they do, and can also help you know what employees of the company are going through or how the company operates. It can also help you know about past or even present company employees and how best to get tips and information on how best to handle the interview. So a background check would help you do that. Now, don't get it twisted. It is very possible for a company to be genuine and real without having digital footprints. It is very possible, but it's in this computer age, it is a very rare situation. In 2022, there's hardly any company in Nigeria without digital footprints. If there are maybe very few companies that are not digitally compliant. So having no digital footprint is a major red flag. It might not be everything you need to know about whether a company is genuine or not, or whether an interview is good or not, but it's a major concern when you check and there's no digital presence for any company that you're supposed to work, you're planning to work with. It's a major thing that you need to consider while going for an interview. So digital footprint is very important. The second important point that you should note while going for an interview is the messaging template. This essentially means that how was the message that was sent to you? How was it designed? I mean, the messaging template is a major concern because it could speak to the seriousness of a company or the shabbiness of their operations or their processes. When you get an invitation that is riddled with grammatical blunders, it is a major red flag, and it speaks to the credibility of not just the recruitment agency. Of course, it speaks to the credibility of the organization that you're intending to work with. If it is riddled with blunders or it's structured in a way that is not formal enough, then it's a major red flag that you need to take note of. So the messaging template of the invitation that you're getting from a recruitment agency could be a major source of concern for you. And it could also be a sign that, oh, you have to look further and you have to do your background check to be sure that you're not being invited for a scam interview. Another important point to note about the messaging format is how detailed the message is. If you get an invite where the company's name is barely spelled out and maybe the address is not even contained in the message, and what the company does is not contained in the message, it's a red flag. Of course, it is not every situation that you find recruitment agency telling you what company you're being recruited for. No, but in terms of the messaging, it could also speak to the credibility of the exercise that you're going for. If it has no message, if it has no detail about the company, it has no detail about even the recruitment agency and the address and the location of the company, it's a major red flag that you have to take care of. I can factor that into other considerations while deciding whether it is worthy of your time and of course your scarce resources as a young job seeker. In terms of the messaging template, it's also important how you get the message. Is it by email or by text message or by telephone call? If it is often by email, you can check, is it an official email? Because oftentimes you get messages from very, very funny emails, and that's a major red flag. If it's an official email, then it's a test of the credibility of the organization itself, and it speaks to how credible the interview process would be. If it's an SMS, then you have to check the format. If it's a telephone call, you have to be conversant with the voice, and of course the conversation, the tone of the conversation, and how credible the message is based on the telephone call. So all of these concerns are very important in deciding whether an interview is worth going for and whether it's not even a scam company trying to leverage on the economic situation to scam young job seekers. The number three factor that you have to take at the back of your mind is the money factor. Oftentimes, if you're going for an interview or you're being invited for a job interview and the company is requesting that you pay certain amount of money, it's a major red flag. Of course, there are also cases where people have paid money and they got jobs. Most often than not, when people ask you to pay for job interviews, it is often a scam, especially with the manner with which you're asked to pay. In some other cases, they ask you to pay ahead of the interview. In some, you get to the interview point and the first thing they ask for is for you to register and make payment. That is a major red flag. If anybody is going to give you a job, it is almost going to be possible that they are not going to ask you for money. So if you get a recruitment agency and you're being asked to make payment for some funny reasons, then it's a major red flag. It is almost always the case that when you pay for a job interview, especially in a private organization, a private concern, it is likely going to be a scam. So you have to be very careful when you're asked to make payment. Anybody that will give you a job would probably not ask you to pay money to get a job. Of course, there are exceptions with career-driven organizations that offer customized services to top professionals to aid their own job search. Of course, there are other concerns where people ask you to make payment. But for organizations that are recruiting for just young job seekers and they're asking them to make payment, then it's a major, major red flag. The number 4 point you need to take note of is the venue of the interview. In Lagos, there are certain places that when you are invited to come for interview, it's a major red flag. Because if you get invitation for some very funny addresses and very funny places, then it's a major red flag. Especially if there are places that you can easily be exposed to danger and all sorts of criminal activities. You're invited for a job interview and you get to the point of interview and it's just a building that is barely even labeled, that has no major signpost, that has no address, or maybe the address is not even visible on the internet. It's a major red flag. And people have had to go through several dangerous situations in most kind of places like that. People have gone through some have been robbed, some have been exposed to danger, some have been kidnapped, and even in some cases, some have been killed due to that kind of situation. So if the venue of the interview is obscure and is not known to you, or is not even something that could be traced easily, then it's a major red flag. These days where you have Skype interviews and also the online interviews, it is possible to have interviews and you don't necessarily need to have to go there physically. So, but nonetheless, people still conduct physical interviews. But if you have to go to remote places, obscure places in town, especially in places where the security situation is not really impressive, then it's a major red flag. And you have to put that into serious consideration before going for that kind of interview. The fifth major red flag that you have to look out for is an interview that does not specify the kind of placement or the kind of position that you are being interviewed for. It's a major red flag. If people send you an invite and you don't really know what you're being interviewed for, you don't know the position that you're being interviewed for, it calls for concern. And sometimes you get invite, and another dimension to that is that you get invite from places that you don't even, maybe you didn't even apply for. There are invitations that you just get from random organizations that ordinarily you did not even submit your applications to. It's a major red flag. People, we have seen cases of scam companies and other scam fraudulent individuals scooping through tons and tons of people's emails via different means. It might be through NYC, it might be through some random groups on the internet, and they get people's contact details and they send them invitation to job interviews. And because people are so, I mean, understandably desperate to get jobs, some people go to those kind of interviews and they get exposed to all sort of dangers and criminal activities. So it's very important, if you don't if you have not applied for an interview or for a job a job position, and you get invitation to come for the job, it's a major red flag. You have to consider that it is possible for you to still have to get opportunity through random friends that might have submitted your application elsewhere, or they might have put down or sent your number to certain people without letting you know. That's a possibility, but it's a red flag that you have to consider. If you have not sent your application anywhere and you get a random invite, you have to be very careful how much consideration you give to that before you go ahead. Having said all of this, what are the major tips that you need to hold on to in order to avoid all of these major pitfalls and then not to fall victim of being scammed or being kidnapped or being killed in some extreme cases? There are several basic tips that we can hold on to that can help us to navigate our ways around all of these major red flags. First, research the company as much as you can to ascertain credibility of that same company or even the organization that's recruited. Be wary of companies that use free emails, like um, unpaid for emails rather than customized emails. If it is a major red flag, if companies use just free email, or if individuals send you invite through free emails and not customized company emails, it's a major red flag. So beware of that. Don't be desperate. As a young job seeker, it's very understandable that we're under pressure, economic pressure to meet certain obligations and to pay bills. It is very understandable. But that notwithstanding, it is very important for us to not to be desperate while seeking job. It's very important so that people capitalize on the desperation of young job seekers to defraud them. So don't be desperate as a young job seeker. When you send invitation to people to your organization, check your inbox, check your spam mails, check several other places that you think the emails might have been dropped into, so that you don't miss major invitation or major opportunities. I've had people who didn't check through some of their emails. I mean, not just the inbox, maybe the spam box or some other places where emails go to, and they missed out of opportunities. So it's very important for you to check your email as constant, as regularly as you can. When a company says that you don't need to be interviewed, that you have to just resume to a company, you have to be very careful. It's a major red flag. Companies that bypass interviews and major recruitment processes and tell you to resume to the company, especially in obscure places in town, it's a major red flag. You have to be very careful how much you take those kind of companies seriously. Then, if you're going for an interview, let your guardian or your friends or your families know about where you're going. And if possible, you can go along and give them addresses of where you're going, or even the telephone number of a contact person you're meeting when at the place that you're going. But let them be aware of where you're going to, so that it's a major concern when it comes to security, and they'll be able to check and get to you maybe over a period of time if they don't see you. And most importantly, you can also rely on companies that are reputable in the job and recruitment industry. Companies like Jobberman, like Jaros Hub, that are doing quite well in compiling the names of recruitment agencies. And you can also verify some of these companies. Even in and there are some of them are even listed in newspapers like the Guardian on Thursdays, where you can get names of companies that are recruiting. Of course, it is not a guarantee that companies that are listed, that are mentioned, I mean, that are published in newspapers or even on reputable websites, can't scam young job seekers or even expose them to dangers. But it narrows down the possibility of you being exposed to danger. If a company, for instance, is mentioned in newspaper, it raises the credibility of that company. In whole, it is important for us to approach all of these issues with some sort of moderation and be careful how much we expose ourselves to as being desperate, so that scam artists would not capitalize on our desperation to scam us or expose us to dangers. Thank you for your time, and I hope that you've been able to get one or two things from what I've said. In case you enjoyed this content, please subscribe to this channel, like our videos. We'll bring you content like this going forward. And you can also follow us across social media platforms. The name is Oladende Olawe on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, and on TikTok. The name is Oladende Olawe. Thank you for having me. Bye bye.